Hi Puffy Amiyumi. For those of you who don't know, Hi Puffy Amiyumi is a Cartoon Network show that aired between 2004 to 2006. The show itself stars Janice Kawaii from Teenage Robot and Grey Delisle from Billy and Mandy as the voices of younger, fictionalized versions of the real-life Japanese pop group Puffy Amiyumi. But in case you have no idea who Puffy Amiyumi are, they were the ones who performed the iconic theme song to the original Teen Titans that everyone knows and loves. Hi Puffy Amiyumi itself is honestly a really great show, and I suggest you folks should give it a watch. But anyways, in 2005, the show must have been really popular for Cartoon Network to consider that it warranted 2 video games, and what we got was Hi Puffy Amiyumi Kaznapped, released in 2005 for the Game Boy Advance, and Hi Puffy Amiyumi The Genie and the Amp for the Nintendo DS in 2006. But today, I'll only be looking at Kaznapped for the Game Boy Advance. So Hi Puffy Amiyumi Kaznapped was developed by Altron, a Japanese game developer who made many classics like Home Alone for the Super Nintendo, The Simpsons Road Rage on Game Boy Advance, and a ton of portable Nickelodeon games. The game itself was published by D3 Publisher, who published many classics like The Croods, Prehistoric Party, and Turbo on the DS. Now D3 themselves are no strangers to publishing Cartoon Network video games, since they had the video game license to Ben 10 and of course Puffy Amiyumi, as well as gaining full control of publishing Cartoon Network games from 2009 to 2014 after Midway went bankrupt. Now the game itself surprisingly has pretty high ratings for a Cartoon Network game, since Cartoon Network games around this time weren't really the greatest. Now despite most reviewers having the mindset that all licensed games are bad, I'm someone who actually kinda enjoys licensed games. I don't know, it might be because I grew up with licensed games. But anyways, I'm gonna play this game and see if it's worthy of this rating as well as your time playing it. So our game begins with an intro of our main characters while showing the real Ami and Yumi with their cartoon counterparts. The title screen also has a Game Boy Advance rendition of the show's theme song, which is something I can personally enjoy listening to every now and then. So the game's plot is about Ami and Yumi taking a well-deserved break after performing their concerts. Their manager Kaz is asking them why aren't they making any new songs, with the two saying that they're just tired and they simply need a break. The duo's annoying and over-obsessive #1 fan Harmony just walks in and demands that they take her on a concert tour, with the duo refusing to do so. Not sure why Harmony didn't just go to one of their concerts. Maybe they're just sold out or something. Or maybe she just wants special treatment for being Ami and Yumi's #1 fan. After the duo refuses this request, Harmony decides to just go on her own tour, which results in her trapping Ami and Yumi in lollipops, along with stealing their instruments and kidnapping Kaz, by what I assume is hypnotizing him, which knocks him out and allows Harmony to make her escape. The duo are quickly set free by their pet cats Jang King and Takirai, and it's up to Ami and Yumi to reclaim their instruments and rescue Kaz. So yeah, it's a very simple and basic kidnapping plot, but it does get to the point. So in the game, you have to travel around the world to find Kaz, with the game having a level structure similar to the original Sonic the Hedgehog, with there being 3 acts in each zone, or in this case, countries and regions, with there being a total of 6 worlds and 18 levels. Now the game may sound short, but the game itself can take around 2 hours to complete, which is fair enough for a mid-2000s portable licensed kids game. So in the game, you're given the choice to play as either Ami or Yumi, with the girls having their own differences from each other. Ami can do a triple jump, which is helpful at avoiding enemies or getting across large gaps. She also has a grappling hook, which she can use to attack by pressing R. It also allows you to swing across long gaps, which I do find pretty fun to use. Ami can also use her drumsticks to glide by simply holding up. Yumi, on the other hand, is the fastest out of the two, as well as the strongest. Yumi can also pull and push these smaller blocks, which are used for light puzzle solving later on in the game. Yumi also has a dash ability she can use by jumping and pressing R, and I personally always pick Ami every time the level starts. But this doesn't mean I downright never play as Yumi, since you can switch between the two by simply pressing the L button. The game's level design is generally simple, since the game was definitely meant for kids who were watching the show on Cartoon Network, or YTV over here in Canada. off topic for a moment, but am I the only one who finds it fascinating and weird that a few Cartoon Network shows like Dexter, Powerpuff, Samurai Jack, and of course Ami and Yumi aired on YTV in Canada? I don't know, man. I'm used to Cartoon Network shows being on Teletoon over here in Canada. Anyways, I honestly don't mind the levels being pretty short and simple, aside from like World 1's levels, because I just want to hear the music go on for a bit longer. Speaking of the music, I find the music very good and extremely underrated for the Game Boy Advance, and I could seriously listen to this music for hours and I easily wouldn't get tired of listening to them. Also, am I the only one who thinks the songs for World 3 and 4 sound like Scooby-Doo music? I mean, just take a listen for yourself. So the enemies for the most part definitely fit in and feel like they belong in the game and the show. You primarily see fans and photographers throughout the game. The fans are always trying to grab you, but it's generally pretty easy to avoid them by simply jumping over them as Ami. Photographers on the other hand only hurt you when they take a picture and you can simply walk past them without taking any damage. However, if you attack an enemy, you simply lose points, but if you really care about points in the game, you can simply pet the cats for extra points. The game's loophole to attacking enemies is either singing or playing a note on your guitar by simply holding down and pressing R. Doing this will temporarily stun your enemy for a limited amount of time and allows you to walk past an enemy without being grabbed or hurt. Although you can already walk past the photographer without taking damage, as I mentioned earlier. So in terms of other enemies in the game, you face off against enemies like bulls, sharks, and an octopus that you can't attack no matter what. There's also these Kaz robots you start seeing by World 2 and all the boss fights. Strangely, Yumi is the only one who can actually attack the robots, but I think it does make sense because Yumi carries a guitar as a weapon, while Ami just uses a whip which only stuns robots. Also, I think it's pretty satisfying to destroy a bunch of Kaz robots in a row. So I mentioned boss fights, and I find the game's use of boss fights very interesting because you play a shmup similar to games like Gradius, Air Zonk, Ikaruga, or those two levels in Super Mario Land. Now personally, I don't really give a shit about shmups. Not to say that they're bad or anything, it's just that I'm not super into them like RPGs, minus these few exceptions. However, in Puffy Amiyumi, I do find these boss levels to be pretty fun to play. Yeah, it might be because these levels are pretty easy, but I do enjoy these shmup stages since they're a nice break from the main platforming gameplay. I also like these stages because of the soundtrack, and because the Puffy Amiyumi theme song plays during the actual boss fight. I know some might call this lazy, but I personally don't mind the game playing the Puffy Amiyumi theme song during the boss. So when it comes to actually fighting the boss in these levels, they're all very easy, because all you have to do is simply hold the attack button throughout the entire level just to win. But if you quickly want to get past these boss fights, my best advice for you is to perform a concert by pressing both the L and R button at the same time, because it does a fair amount of damage to the boss. Oh yeah, I should also remind you that these potions on the bottom right corner show you how many times you can perform a concert during the shmup stages. So in case you're wondering, the game does give you unlimited continues and autosaves after beating a boss, and you respawn close to where you die in all levels. Oh yeah, I forgot to write this down in my initial script, but in World 4, which is called Desert Island, wow, real creative, you immediately get thrown into a water level with Ami and Yumi wearing swimsuits. The two move very slowly underwater, which is kind of fitting in a way since you move very slowly underwater in real life. However, you can simply swim by pressing the A button similar to Mario. But unlike Mario, who has the ability to breathe underwater in his 2D games, Ami and Yumi cannot breathe underwater, with their life meter slowly going down and their skin becoming more darker as they slowly drown and straight up fucking die. Thankfully, the game has a good amount of air pockets that allow you to replenish your health, even if you get hit by an enemy. After this level, you go back to your regular platforming and light puzzle solving on the island, and the rest of the levels, with the last level taking place in space, where you fight a bulldozer and eventually get to fight Harmony. Look at this, you literally get to beat the fuck out of this child. So after beating Harmony, the game kinda just ends, with Ami and Yumi flying back to Japan with Kaz driving. Wait, I just realized, we don't actually see Ami and Yumi rescue Kaz, since the game ends so abruptly. And wait, if Kaz was driving at the end of the game, then who was driving during the shmup stages? Was the bear driving all this time? So in conclusion, I think Hi Puffy Amiyumi Kaznapped for the Game Boy Advance is definitely worthy of being a hidden gem for the Game Boy Advance, as well as easily being the best Cartoon Network video game that I've played so far. The game itself could be pretty fun at times, and yeah, it may get a little tedious at times, and a little difficult during the light puzzle solving, like this one area in World 3. The game itself is pretty faithful to its source material, with the game's art style matching the show it's based on. So yeah, I think this game is definitely worthy of owning or playing if you're a Cartoon Network fan like myself, or if you're looking for a decent game to play on your Game Boy Advance or emulator.